In the autumn of 732, near the city of Tours in modern-day France, two armies collided in what history would later call one of the most pivotal battles in early European history. On one side stood Charles Martel, the Frankish warlord and grandfather of Charlemagne, commanding a coalition of Christian forces. On the other, the Umayyad Caliphate's Andalusian army, led by the seasoned general Abd al-Rahman al-Ghafiqi, pressing northward from their stronghold in the Iberian Peninsula. The real history remembers Martel as victorious, a hammer who halted the Islamic advance and set the stage for medieval Christendom. But let's imagine a different outcome. What if Charles Martel had lost the Battle of Tours? What if the Islamic army had triumphed, and Western Europe had fallen under the long shadow of the Umayyad banner? To understand the enormity of this divergence, we must begin with the immediate consequences. With the Frankish army shattered, the road into central Gaul would have lain wide open. The Umayyads, already masters of Hispania, could have pressed forward to take key cities like Tours, Orléans, and perhaps even Paris itself. Frankish resistance, fragmented, feudal, and poorly organized, would not have stood a chance without Martel's centralized authority. The aristocracy of Aquitaine and Burgundy, long operating independently, would have faced stark choices: surrender, convert, or flee. France, as we know it, might never have formed. Without the Carolingian dynasty to consolidate power and culture, the region could have splintered into semi-autonomous emirates ruled by Arab or Berber governors under the authority of the Caliph in Damascus, or later Cordoba. In this altered reality, the legacy of Roman Gaul might have blended not with Germanic Christianity, but with the art, science, and jurisprudence of the Islamic world. Mosques would rise where Gothic cathedrals were meant to stand. Cities like Lyon and Bordeaux might mirror the sophisticated architecture of Fez or Granada. Culturally, the transformation would be profound. Arabic would become the language of administration and scholarship. Latin, already waning, would fade further into obscurity. Romance languages might never fully develop as we know them. Instead, hybrid dialects combining Arabic syntax with local Gaulish or Frankish roots would emerge. Names like Pierre or Jean might be replaced by Musa or Tariq. Markets would sell dates and saffron alongside bread and cheese. And education, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy would flourish under a system more advanced than anything Europe had seen since the fall of Rome. Christianity, meanwhile, would find itself pushed to the periphery. The Pope, deprived of Frankish protection, might turn east toward Byzantium for aid, or retreat into obscurity. Without the Carolingians, there is no Holy Roman Empire. No Charlemagne. No fusion of Roman, Christian, and Germanic identities that define medieval Europe. Instead, a new identity would emerge, an Islamic Europe, shaped by Quranic values, Berber customs, and Arab science. Yet the spread of Islam would not be uniform or uncontested. Resistance would simmer in mountainous regions, places like the Alps, the Pyrenees, and central Germania, where local warlords and Christian zealots might organize guerrilla campaigns. These holdouts could become the seeds of future insurrections or crusades. But in the meantime, the Islamic presence would be dominant in the urban centers, where law, trade, and culture align with the broader Muslim world. The economic benefits for Europe could be enormous. Integrated into the vast Umayyad trading network, Gaul and the Rhineland would enjoy access to spices, silks, manuscripts, and technologies from Persia, India, and China. The Mediterranean, long a barrier between civilizations, would become a unified commercial sea. Trade routes would connect Alexandria to Marseille, Damascus to Paris, Baghdad to Bordeaux. The stagnation of the so-called Dark Ages might be averted altogether. This interconnected Islamic Europe would foster learning. The Islamic Golden Age, already thriving in Baghdad, would find fertile ground in Paris or Toulouse. Scholars from Mecca to the Seine would debate Aristotle and Avicenna, translate ancient Greek texts, and innovate in algebra, optics, and medicine. Universities, or madrasas, would emerge centuries earlier than Oxford or Bologna, producing polymaths who blend Western and Eastern traditions. And the Renaissance? It might happen earlier. Not in 15th century Florence, but in 11th century Paris or Cordoba-sur-Seine. The arts would flourish, not through oil paintings of saints, but through intricate calligraphy, geometric mosaics, poetry, and architecture inspired by both Roman ruins and Islamic aesthetics. Gothic architecture might never take root. Instead, we'd see domes, minarets, and muqarnas lining the European skyline. But time moves forward. As centuries pass, this Islamic Europe begins to face its own internal evolutions. The rigid hierarchies of caliphal control begin to loosen. New empires rise, perhaps Turkic dynasties in Eastern Europe, North African reformists in the south, or even hybrid Frankish Muslim noble houses in the heart of France. Over time, the line between colonizer and local blurs. Just as the Visigoths assimilated into Roman culture, so too would Gauls and Franks become indistinguishable from the Umayyad elite. As the 1600s approach, the seeds of something new begin to stir. In our own history, this was the dawn of the Enlightenment, a period of profound intellectual upheaval. In this alternate world, the Enlightenment still comes. But it arises not in defiance of the Catholic Church, but in a world where Islamic rationalism, theological diversity, and scientific curiosity form the dominant backdrop. The thinkers of this age draw not from Descartes or Newton, but from Ibn Rushd, Al-Farabi, and a long-standing culture of ijtihad, independent reasoning in Islamic law. They ask similar questions: what is the nature of the universe? Can reason triumph over tradition? What are the limits of religious authority? But their answers are framed within different epistemologies. Instead of separation of church and state, they call for rebalancing the relationship between shura, consultative governance, and fiqh, jurisprudence. The idea of liberty, equality, and justice are debated not in salons, but in coffee houses, libraries, and mosques cum academies stretching from Frankfurt to Fez. Revolutions still happen, but their symbols and slogans differ. A Parisian uprising against religious elites might cry not liberté, égalité, fraternité, but Huria, ADL, sure freedom, justice, consultation. Monarchs may fall, but so too might dogmatic scholars whose interpretations stifle change. The role of women, of minorities, and of the state would all undergo transformation, not necessarily mirroring Western liberalism, but evolving on its own trajectory, shaped by the ethical foundations of Islamic thought. Technological progress would continue. The Industrial Revolution might emerge not in Manchester, but in Marseille or Alexandria, driven by textile innovation, mechanical engineering, and water management techniques refined by centuries of Islamic science. Arabic remains the language of mathematics and medicine, while French and German function as regional dialects absorbed into this civilizational engine. Steam power, gunpowder empires, and global trade follow. And what of colonialism? The Americas are still discovered, but perhaps by Andalusian Muslims, or Maghrebi explorers sponsored by the Caliph of Paris. Colonization might still be brutal, but its religious tone is different. Conversion campaigns shift from Christianity to Islam, but the underlying economic motives remain. Indigenous resistance still shapes the story. Perhaps the name New Andalusia replaces New Spain. Perhaps Ibn Columbus becomes the name every schoolchild knows. By the 20th century, the world looks familiar in shape, but alien in substance. World War I might erupt not between empires named Britain and Germany, but between the fractured Islamic successor states of Western Europe. Perhaps the Paris Caliphate challenges the Rhineland Emirate for dominance. Or maybe it's a three-way battle with the Ottoman East. Trench warfare still exists. So does mechanized death. But the uniforms, languages, and ideologies differ. World War II? Fascism may not rise in the same form, but authoritarianism always finds a way. Perhaps a populist emir in Gaul promises a return to pure Islam and wages war against secular reformers and dissenting sects. Anti-Semitism might manifest differently, rooted in ethnic politics or pan-Islamic unity. The Holocaust might not occur, but other atrocities could take its place. In the post-war world, Europe remains a technological and intellectual power, but rooted in Islamic tradition. The space race is real. The minaret and the rocket rise together. Paris becomes a beacon of modern ijtihad, where AI ethics are debated with both Quranic and computational logic. The European Union might still form, but it's not a Christian club. It's a multi-ethnic, multi-sect federation shaped by centuries of Islamic pluralism. Globalization follows. Films, music, literature, these are no longer dominated by Hollywood, but by studios in Casablanca, Istanbul, and Alhambra studios of Andalusian France. Social movements exist, as do divisions, but the philosophical underpinnings differ. Western values no longer dominate the global conversation, because there is no West. Just an Islamicized, globally integrated, post-colonial modernity where debates are framed around stewardship, harmony, and the balance between faith and reason. And America? The United States may still exist, formed by colonists fleeing persecution, but perhaps their oppressor was not a Protestant monarch, but an intolerant caliph. The American Constitution might borrow ideas not from Locke and Montesquieu, but from al-Mawardi and Ibn Khaldun. Its First Amendment might protect not just speech and religion, but also freedom from rigid interpretation. The melting pot becomes even more complex in a world where cultural dominance never shifted to the West. Today, in 2025, we look at a world not split by East and West, Christianity and Islam, but shaped by a unified thread that began when Charles Martel failed at Tours. The world isn't necessarily better or worse. It's more interconnected, more hybrid, more complicated. The lines of identity are different. The centers of power have shifted. But human curiosity, ambition, and struggle remain unchanged. All of this because of a single battle. One that could have gone the other way. One that, in another strand of reality, did.